Welcome to Cooper Talk. I'm your host, Steve Cooper, and remember, I'm only as hip as my guests. And I have to tell you something, people. It's cooled off this week, but last Monday, this is no lie. Now, fall started last week, I believe. Last Monday, it was actually 104 degrees in Burbank. Now, true, I can't complain because I live in LA, and we do have beautiful weather all the time. Today's very nice. It's probably like 80 out. But 104 at the end of September is just not right. So hopefully we won't get that again. I know I looked at my time hop from last year, and I think we hit around 100 last year. So we get some weird heat waves in October. Now it's October, and it's not good because, it's fall time. Joanne put a little thing on the door, like a welcome with the wreath, like the fall wreath, and then it's 104. Anyway, we have a great show today, and I found out my guest, actually, he did live in Burbank for a while, and he doesn't live there anymore, so he's missing the heat. But my guest is Daniel De La Rejas. How you doing, Dan?
Good. How are you guys?
Good. So you now when did you live in California? How long ago?
I lived in California I'd say about 10 years now.
Okay.
Before I moved where I'm living currently, which is Georgia. After I joined the Zac Brown Band, I moved over here. But before that, I lived in Las Vegas for a good 3-4 years. And then before that, I lived in Los Angeles for, 20 years or something like that, and right by where you're at.
Okay. It's I was reading about you. It's really amazing. Like, a lot of times I ask my guests, what got you into music? Was there music in your household? But your whole family is a history of percussionists, right?
Absolutely. Third generation. It's crazy.
So
it's funny. My niece now even plays. She's playing percussion and singing with George Benson.
Oh, wow.
It's crazy.
So what was it like growing up around a house like that? I mean, was there always music in your house, or did your father go away? I know, and I believe your grandfather's a player. I mean, how was it all with family reunions and stuff like that? And when you got together, was there always music?
It was, it just seemed like the normal thing. Now, of course, looking back in hindsight and comparing it to somebody else's, what is normal, right? But lifestyle, I just thought that was it. That was perfectly normal to be. The playgrounds were backstages at the hotels in Las Vegas or wherever my dad was going off to get a job and try to feed 5 hungry mouths. So I would hang around backstages all the time, and people would be coming over to the house with her to rehearse, or they're friends of my father to play, jam, whatever. So I just always thought that was the norm. Little did I know that how fortunate that was, Growing up, hanging around backstage, meeting Milton Berle and Tony Bennett and Juliet Krauss and Debbie Reynolds, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. Many very famous entertainers from that era, from my dad's era, that my dad played with, or my grandfather, and actually being around that as a young kid backstage was pretty crazy.
That must have been
that was the norm.
Yeah, they're like legends. So your father was very successful because he played with these big people. I mean, for a kid, that must be. I guess as a kid though, it's probably that's what you grow up with. So you don't think, as you said, it's the norm. So you don't think it's different because that's what you're around. Now, when did you actually start picking up and starting to play? At what age? And were you always knowing you were going to go into percussion, or was there a thought maybe you'd want to pick up the guitar or anything like that?
Right. Well, I started playing pretty much right from the get-go. I mean, I have pictures 4 or 5 years old playing around with a pad. And my dad always had drums around the house, so those were, besides the normal toys, those were the things to go and play with. So I started playing at a very young age. Very fortunate at that. But professionally, I would say probably my first professional event was around 15 or 16, and that was at a university concert with the Louis Bellson Band. I think that was about the first, and then my dad would have us join him on stage. And he said, we grew up, just so you know, sitting next to him while playing the shows, like throughout, and just having to be quiet while the show's going on. And there's a drummer, actually we would sometimes be part of the comedic act or the act, because they would turn around and there's like this little head sticking out of you. Either my older brother or myself, sitting there next to my dad while he played, some legendary star show. But yeah, I started playing professionally around 15, 16, and then played in the junior high school band, jazz band, and then the high school pop band and jazz band, and then kept going on from there. But I originally started with my father learning, because he wanted to always educate. He's the consummate student and teacher at the same time, but it's not always the easiest of things to teach your son. So he tried many times, but it just didn't work. So he tried putting me with different teachers, and actually one of the first instruments that I started with was the accordion.
Okay.
I know, right? Where you go to a music store, and it's like you rent the accordion, you take the lessons. So I started on the accordion, and then realized that wasn't too cool. But I really liked it. It just wasn't cool, and so I stopped, and I always was into sports and stuff. But I always would go back to music, because we always had a music room, a practice room, and so he always, whether my dad was there practicing marimbas, timpanis, drum sets of show, or my brother, who was 6 years older than I am, he was always practicing. So there was always something going on, or many of my dad's friends would come over and jam. So that was just the thing to do. So whenever, Billy Cobham or Alex Acuna or Louis Bellson would come over, and, or the many other drummer musicians that would come over, we would just go to the practice room to go play. And so I grew up in and around this. You can just imagine. I wanted to do other things. I just did not know how to do that. In those days, I didn't have much counseling other than, you looked at a book, and hopefully that's what you would do after college. Look at the pictures when you're young, like that career, and then later on go and get it, unless your father was that, And then, but I wanted to be a pilot. I liked flying, and I wanted to just be a pilot. I just thought that was one of the coolest things in life. But then I had to wear glasses, and in those days, didn't have the LASIK surgery or anything like that. So if you had glasses, it's not like you could go into the military and go to the Air Force, and you were pretty much done.
Right.
So I was, they put the big glasses on me, and I was just devastated. But what can I do? And I kept trying to do sports, and I love soccer, and I love team sports. And then I just got out of high school, and I started working, because in Las Vegas there was a lot of work in those days, especially in the hotels. But I was too young to work in the hotels, but there were still other things that you could do. So I landed a job immediately. I think I was 17 or 16 or 17, and started working with top 40 R&B, mainly funk, fun band, and we would play some clubs that I could get in, and a lot of the military bases, the USO clubs and that kind of stuff, and I would play percussion, sitting on drums once in a while, and that's how I started getting, diving into it like that, and I just ended up liking it so much, and it was so comfortable for me to be on stage and performing that, because I had already been, sitting next to my dad for so many years that wasn't uncomfortable. It was just actually it was more comfortable doing that than getting up and talking to somebody. So I'd be very, very at ease, being on stage and ad-libbing or sharing or adding to a piece of, a new song or a song, whatever. So it was great and fun times.
So you're doing that. You're starting off more in the percussion, and you're drumming now, and you're younger now. As you start getting older, when do you sit there and say, okay, I'm having fun doing this. I'm going to make this my career. At what age did you really decide that you were going to do this?
A few years ago. Okay, so like I said, I started working. My first job was with, first job touring was with a gentleman by the name of Ben Vereen. And he was a Broadway music, he was a comedian, an actor, a dancer, and a singer. So it was killer then to be able to do all of them. He was a gentleman still around, still doing really, really well. But he had done Jesus Christ Superstar, Hair, Pippin, those kinds of shows like that, Broadway plays. And I wasn't privy. I didn't know that genre, because that was more like in Las Vegas at that particular time. There wasn't real Broadway musicals going on, so I had to kind of dive into that and learn it. And through the help of my dad and my brother, they helped me out a lot. And, so anyway, I started touring with him, and I knew I really enjoyed going out on the road and playing music and entertaining. The thing was to what level, because I still wanted to do all these other things. I didn't know how. I didn't have a big brother that was an architect or policeman or everybody's drummer. So I just kept doing that, and then what happens to the music, I wanted more, and I was heavy into all the friends that now they were older brothers to me, like for instance Alex Acuna and Luis Ponte and all that kind of stuff. They would come over, but they lived in Los Angeles, so I wanted more, and there wasn't enough going on in Las Vegas as far as the level of music that I wanted for me at that particular time. There's a lot of incredible musicians, a lot of great shows going on, but I wanted more. I wanted more groups, more jazz, and Las Vegas really wasn't really laid out for that. They didn't have a lot of live music in little clubs, and you go see all the different jazz artists that obviously in Los Angeles you had that, or in New York, right? So I ended up going to Los Angeles and not knowing what I was going to do. I still had the job touring from Las Vegas, and I could stay in Las Vegas and do a production show or something like that if I wanted it, but I wanted to go out and live in Los Angeles. My brother had already moved, Walfredo, to Los Angeles. He was there, and he was playing all the time at all the major, the Baked Potato, which is still there, right?
The one on Cahuenga is still there.
Yeah, that one. So I would go there and see him, or see Alex, or see Vinny and all the guys, and became friends with them. But I still lived in Las Vegas, but I wanted to go to LA. So, but I was like 20, 21, something like that by that time. I've been traveling a little bit with different artists, and definitely going back to Vegas and working with all different kinds of groups and some shows. But I wanted more, like I said. And so I moved to to Los Angeles, excuse me. And I started auditioning. And sure enough, I went there, and my first few auditions, I got my butt kicked, I just wasn't ready. I just wasn't. and which was disheartening, but at the same time it was great because I knew that I needed to pipe down and start really studying, and so that's what I did. I just started putting in little plans, and then I go back to Los Angeles again, and again I got my butt kicked again, and then I did that 3 or 4 times, and finally, I got better and better. I started learning all sorts of different styles and learning them better, and reading music and learning electronics and learning how to talk and how to perform and different kinds of percussions that I needed to know on top of just the basic stuff that you would do in funk bands or basic production shows, and so I started growing, and then with that growth came more work, and then I was able to little by little to sustain myself in Los Angeles, and that's where I feel I grew the most. During those years.
So you're growing,
and
it's good because you didn't give up, which is a lot of times people just say, Howard, you kept coming back, which is great. And I heard you say something earlier. I watched a little tape of you where, you're still, you said your father still, practices all the time, and you say he's not going to go on tour at that age, but it seems like you had a good work ethic instilled by him.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was instilled by him. He was nonstop practicing, always bettering himself, and like you heard on that tape, if we called him now, I know that he'd be either practicing or getting ready to practice or doing something that he wasn't able to do yesterday. That's always my dad, and I think he instilled that in all of us so much so that we're like that all the time, always pushing, and I think that bleeds into anything and everything else that we do besides music. It's always just, well, why not? We're blessed to be here, and we're blessed to be able to do that. Why stay stagnant? So a lot of times people, man, you're a great teacher, and you educate well, and well, the reality of it is I'm a student full time, so just information just flows from one entity to another. I just feel like I'm not a teacher, I'm more a student, and it's a perpetual student that just keeps going and learning and learning and learning and growing and growing and growing all the time.
So you're in LA, you're getting good. Now, who do you start working for then? Because I know you have a really jam-packed resume of people you've worked with. But when you were starting, Ben Vereen was a huge star. You played with him in Vegas, but Ben Vereen, he was Chicken George in Roots. He was accomplished in everything. He was so talented. But when you were playing in LA, who were some of the bigger people you started getting a break with? I know Don Henley and stuff like that, but how did all your breaks start happening in LA where you started working for the bigger people?
Right. Okay, so the way at least it worked back then. I'm not sure if it's still like that now, but you just had to. You didn't have a choice. You just had to do anything and everything in order to meet your responsibilities, and that meant anything. I did work when I first got there. I had to. I was not even music. I was fortunate to live in an era where you could live as a musician only, but again, I was just moving there, so there wasn't enough of that, and I wasn't really known. So, and the jobs that I was getting, like $75 a night gigs and $100, and as it is now, LA has always been very expensive, so you had to do anything and everything. So that meant all the clubs, jazz clubs, like the Baked Potato. I was a mainstay at the Baked Potato for a long time. And you would meet a lot of people, and you would befriend and become friends with many, bass players, piano players, singers, guitar players, and percussionists and whatnot. And that's how little by little it took a long, long time. People, like my brother and myself, who have a real extensive resume of people that we've worked with, they don't realize how many people we tried working with and we didn't get the gig. You know, I mean, I'm talking a lot. So you just can't let it get you. You know, you just got to keep going. So I used to do all sorts of stuff when I first got there, just like I said, to make ends meet. And it wasn't easy, because obviously I wanted to be a musician full time. And the work was getting, you know, as the more time I spent there, the more people I played, the more I would practice and study, the better I got, the more work I would get. But even, you know, you got to take into consideration the cost of living, how expensive it is there, and then on top of it, you know, it's a very, very competitive place. So for every you, there's, you know, a couple hundred of yous. So, you know, I mean, everything factors in. How much you know, your reading, the way you are, you know, the way you behave yourself, people you know, the equipment that you have, and how you play it, of course, and the way you entertain, everything, you know. So, but it was so, as I said earlier, it was one of my favorite times of my life there at those beginning years, because it was so exciting, and it wasn't easy, but it was fun. I always made it, you know, real fun to go do everything and anything that I would get called upon. And I had to do everything from bar mitzvahs, Arabic, Persian gigs, which I did a lot of, weddings, work with a lot of different casuals or corporate events, corporate gigs, and knew all the people that booked those gigs, tuxedo gigs, obviously recordings, and you know, whether it be for commercials, records, or maybe even sometimes movies. But remember, as I said, that for every year there's a couple hundred or more. So competition was fierce. I mean, I remember, Stephen, one of the first few auditions, well, the one that I recall, Natalie Cole one, that I went all excited, didn't have all much money, you know, to buy the music, to learn it, and just got my butt kicked. I mean, it was horrible. And then I went running with like a little dog with his tail between his legs to go practice, study. I needed to learn more percussion, more bells, more timpani in order to do those kinds of jobs. So I would practice that, and then I wanted to maybe expand to try and be more of a drummer. Also, and I remember trying to do. I heard. I can't remember how I found out. I think it was through a singer by the name is Nick. But I heard about the Donny Osmond audition, and Donny was trying to make this transition to the pop world, and he had done really, really good. And so he was going out on a tour. And I only had like a couple dollars and you know, enough for the gas of the album, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get this album. And in those days, it was an actual like record. So I remember going to the tower over there and getting the music and just putting it in the car and just learning it. And I had the drum set in the back of this little Honda station wagon. And I go to the audition. It was in kind of north of Sherman Oaks over there near Victory. I forget that it's probably, again, the place is probably still there. But anyway, I'm waiting outside, and you have all this line of drummers, and then came like a truck with a trailer, and a couple of people started taking out these drums, and it was just like a stage and a huge double bass drum kit, and they went inside with. Then all of a sudden, this guy got out. And he goes inside, and he goes, "Oh, that's Ainsley Dunbar." And oh my God, Ainsley Dunbar! You know, and so he's playing, and we're outside, and I'm listening to the reaction. Everybody's like clapping, and any little fill, everybody's, yeah, how cool it was, whatever he was doing was great. And it was just like, I'm like outside listening to this, excited to be listening to Ainsley Dunbar at the same time going, oh no, and sure enough, Donnie comes out, and there was like only a couple of us left, and he goes, manager said he'd like to talk to you, and Donnie was like so nice, and it's like, unfortunately, we picked our drummer, but we really want to thank you for coming, and we really appreciate you being here. And I'm just, oh, it's okay, it's all right. I'm thinking, man, I don't even have gas money to go home. And sure enough, I didn't even get to play on that audition. And it was funny because a few years later, I ended up working with Donnie, and we became friends. And whenever we see each other, we'd always remember. I would always remember that little story. And he walked out of the audition and told me, "Well, sorry, dude."
So now, how did you end up meeting up with Don Henley, who's also a drummer?
So yeah, Don's absolutely hands down one of my favorite entertainers ever. Drummer, singer, person. And how I met Don was because I was working with a gentleman by the name of Frank Simes, guitar player that had played with, I believe he did some with the Stones, and he did some gigs with Stevie Nicks. And so I did some gigs with Stevie, and Frank is the one that when Don was putting his new band together for the Inside Job tour, Frank called and he recommended me to Don and the management. So that's how the whole thing, and that again, how I got the Stevie thing was just because working so much around town and getting to be known so much that you would get the call as one of the first guys, for auditions and stuff. And again, like I said earlier, a lot of auditions I didn't get, and some I didn't get the first time, and maybe a couple of years or 2, 3, 4, 5 years later, I ended up working with. I'll give you an example. The Earth, Wind, and Fire thing, when I first got called to play with Earth, Wind was because I had played with Philip. And I knew Philip, and Philip was my friend, because we had done jazz tours when Philip was doing his solo career. I used to play with Rodney Franklin, Doc Powell, Ronnie Laws, and Philip Bailey, and we toured Japan. And that was mainly House of Blues, fusion, jazz events or gigs. So that's how I met Philip. So when Philip went to put back Earth, Wind, and Fire after their hiatus for umpteen years, they called me. But at that time, I was getting ready to play with Yanni. And it was a tough one because I grew up with Earth, Wind, and Fire, and Philip is a friend. But the Yanni thing at that particular time was offering so much money. And it was a contract, so it was on a steady basis. So you're talking, 2, 3 year commitment, and but still, to a person that has always been chasing music instead of money, that was a hard decision to make. But I ended up working with Johnny, and didn't regret it. And later on, Philip ended up calling me back. And he said, "What about now?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm ready." So that's how I ended up doing the Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Well, it's amazing because you just said in three different instances, 3 different huge people, but yet 3 different completely styles of music. So that must be exciting for you. I mean, Yanni, Don Henley, Earth, Wind, and Fire. They couldn't be any more different. how do you prep? How do you prep yourself? I mean, yes, you're a percussionist and a drummer, and you're talented because you're getting the work. But how do you sit there and just? I know you do it for a few years, but how do you just like switch gears? Like you're used to playing with Yanni, and then you're going to play with Earth, Wind, and Fire. I mean, how do you mentally get prepared for that?
Right, and then mentally prepared at that age, that's a whole other animal as to how I would approach it now.
Okay.
I have to say, because my father was so versatile, I realized and I knew that I just accepted that that was part of being a musician, was being able to do all these many different types of genres of music. So it was already kind of ingrained in me. So it wasn't just like I was going to be a show drummer or a salsa percussionist or an orchestral percussionist, or no, it was just I wanted, and I knew that I wanted to try to do as much different genres all the time. It's hard because it's hard to just do one great, but that's where your devotion and your practice. I would practice a lot, and I would apply basic rules, and sometimes I would forget them, and sometimes I would try applying them, and it didn't work. Like I said, a lot of gigs I did not get, but I would learn. Basic ones such as big ears and play less and try to fit in and be a team player instead of the soloist, and so I would those kinds of basic rules would help towards any situation. But it's just growing up, listening to look, my father was a real big fan, and his friends, and he came from that era, from the 50s, the bebop era, Philly Joe Jones era, even the big band with Buddy, Eugene, and Louie era. So he was always talking, and we were hearing about that and listening to the albums all the time, and eventually seeing them as they would come by, the Babesy, all that kind of stuff. But then he was also very much into the Elvin Jones, the bebop era, the Tony, that kind of stuff, and so we'd be listening to that. But at the same time, he would have to go play shows at night that it would be anything from a production show, which had a little bit of everything, to a show like a Tony Bennett, which, you'd have to be playing plushes and beautiful soft jazz ballads and some big band stuff, but, just completely different than other stuff that he'd be listening to in the daytime or talking about. And then he would have to play a comedian. Then he would have to play a comedian or a magician or something. How do you play that? So, it has a style. And then, the same thing with different dancers. Singer, dancer is like, you definitely have to know how to play behind somebody like that. So I was watching them. And on top of that, my brother, he was in the band at school, and he was into, The Who and Led Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix and Three Dog Night, and so he'd be all into that. So as younger brother, you always want, what's my big brother doing? So, but at the same time, my brother was studying, and he was playing at the big band, the band at the university, and that was all, big band charts and all that kind of stuff. And then he was also playing, a lot of R&B and cool stuff, and then you had the Motown thing going on, a lot of Motown groups in the area. And at the same time, I was playing these top 40 bands, and we'd be playing, Cameo on Earth, Wind, and Fire, and all that kind of stuff, for the dance clubs. And so I grew up like loving all that different kind of stuff. Then you had factor in also my mom, who was always playing different Latin albums, salsa, and we would always go back to that because that was in such an integral part of our roots. You know, it's just like somebody, a lot of friends would come over and it'd be, you know, put the records on, talking about Celia Cruz or Tito Puente, or, you know, or they would come over, and so there was always that. And then we'd go into the room and we would end up playing a whole lot of drums and percussion, and so we always go in that direction. So you could just imagine, I just told you like a whole bunch of stuff. So when I got to play with Ben Vereen, the interesting thing is, out of all the styles that my dad would play and that I was introduced to, Broadway really wasn't one of them. But at the same time, he knew, because he came from New York and Cuba and Havana, so he knew that. So he started educating me, told me, you know, what to listen for and all that kind of stuff. I mean, right now I'm just, as I'm talking to you, I'm thinking back at all the many stories, you know, asking them, what do I do? What am I going to do here? I don't even, you know, I got to act like and play like I know what I'm doing, and I don't. You know, 3-4 jazz ballad on brushes, and I'm like, you know, sweating because I've never played one.
Right.
And he's sitting there showing me, you know. But anyway, you know, going back to the many genres, and I found that I've just been always accepting to anything and everything since it's almost like I've been training this whole lifetime for what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, that's another genre, country.
Well, I mean, if you go back, you know, in the Las Vegas area, when I used to have to, you know, whenever I would go back to Vegas and I needed to work, I would work with any band that would hire me. So whether it was percussion or drums, and sometimes I would play with these groups that we would tour Nevada, and it'd be like, you know, country band playing Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, you know, Patsy Cline, and so I had to kind of learn that, and I enjoyed it. You know, wasn't as rhythmical as playing, you know, Earth, Wind, Fire, and Lakeside, and Cameo, and that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it was fun, and I really would enjoy putting in the radio, and you had that all the time in the Nevada area. So the country music was always there. Country music right now has evolved so much that you have influences on so many different genres of music going on within that. So anyway, it lends itself it really easily for a person like me to adapt and play what's needed in order to complement that style of music, especially what I'm doing currently.
Well, how did you end up with Zac Brown? How did that whole situation start? And I mean, what's it like for you now playing? I mean, I saw some pictures, you know, of you at Fenway and stuff like that. I mean, how did you hook up with him?
How we initially met, I had never heard of Zac Brown prior to this meeting, but we were at a music event in Northern California where there was all sorts of different camps going on. Some was jazz, some was rock, some was, you know, Brazilian jazz. And anyway, I went to this one, and I was carrying a djembe with me. And Zac was there, and a few of the guys, and they were sitting in just jamming. And the gentleman I was with, a drummer, by the way, by the name of Carl Arnold from Northern California, he said, "Hey, that's Zac Brown." And, you know, I did not know who that was. And so he said, "Go jam with him." And I'm like, "Man, I'm carrying a djembe and they're playing a ballad. What are we going to do?" You know, and he's like, go jam. And I'm like, man, you know, it was like, no, I'm going to put a circle in a square. But he was like, come on, pushing me. And And then Zach looked over, and Zach, just so you know, Zach loved the djembe when he was in college. He used to play a lot. He would write a lot just playing the djembe, write a lot of songs off of jamming just on his djembe. So when he saw that, he kind of motioned to come in. So we played. I played real simple, nothing. I mean, just imagine, at djembe they were kind of playing some, can't remember what song, but it was, I remember it wasn't an up-tempo song or anything like that. And, but anyway, we ended up talking till wee hours in the morning. Also about all sorts of stuff, music mainly. And then we had a nice rapport. I thought, man, this is a nice guy. And so nothing of it. We laughed, and the next year we coincidentally saw each other at a similar event, and he asked me, hey, would you like to sit in with the band? And I had all my percussion stuff. So I said, sure. It was just good timing. And so I sat there, and I didn't know a lot of the songs and stuff, but I just played it very, very safe. Well, what would be complementary to that, as safe as possible, just adding little textures here and there. I think he might have given me like a little bit of a solo in one of the songs or something, but it was just, adding, complementing what was already there, which was really good. The band was awesome. And then he asked me to join him on tour. And so I went, and the first performance was a video that we did for the ZBB band project, which was live at Red Rocks. And that was like the first performance. I told him, I said, man, you didn't tell me it was going to be a video.
Right.
And he's like, don't worry about it. He said, you'll be fine. I'm like, man, I like to, know what I'm getting myself into. But anyway, so that performance was just kind of feeling things out. Have you ever seen it? That's, Zach at Red Rock, that's the first time I played with him, really. So that's how we met.
And then he asked you to join the band after that?
Well, right. So then after that, we went on tour, and I joined them, and again, just feeling things out. And then I recorded with them, and Uncaged came out, and Uncaged did really well, and it won a Grammy. And but before that, he asked me, they made me a band member, so I thought, wow, this is cool.
Now, how long have you been
That's
playing
how
with
it
him?
happened.
How long have you been playing with him?
Now it's going on 5 years.
Now, what's it like?
October.
What's it like when you?
Yeah, 5 years.
What's it like when you play these giant venues? I mean, it must be insane. Like, do you have to get in a certain zone? I mean, Fenway, it's a legendary place. I know you played there. What is that like?
People ask me that. I don't do anything different than I would do in the small club. I put it all out. It doesn't matter where I'm at. So, the preparation prior to the performance is the same. Just warm-ups for me, just so I can feel comfortable, so I don't have to be thinking about execution. I'm in the moment. So warm-ups is crucial for me in order to be able to get to that comfortable spot. As far as how I perform, it is a little bit different only because it's so big that I make things a little bit more visual. So rather than play quicker, smaller notes, I play less, bigger notes. um, because you have to transmit. It's it's like half a mile down to the end, and even though you have cameras and screens, a lot of times you can't. You got to make sure. So you perform differently in a stadium. You perform bigger.
So you've been playing all this time, and now you've been playing for your career, and now you're doing a lot more. You're giving back. I want to hear about your program, Dayglow. The website, people, is dayglow.org. How did you start deciding to give back? Is that something you've always done?
Absolutely. So in going back to what I said, many of my best friends would come over and grab me and take me on as their students and take me on as their friends and just teach me. And so it was very comfortable for me to already start giving some of that information to other people. 16, 17 was my first seminar clinic. So I was already doing that. So the information would come to you, and you in turn would give to others. That's what I feel that's always been the case. So, in joining, when I came over here, I had done so many different kinds of seminars, clinics, and I started getting involved with schools, and I would, while I was in Las Vegas, go to an organization by the name of Opportunity Village and get special needs kids and just have fun with them and develop, all sorts of programs and classes with them. It was just something I wanted to do. So when I came over here, I bought some property, and I knew I wanted to teach, and I would walk in the back, what I'm looking at right now. And, something I could never do in California or Las Vegas, it's you buy half an acre, a quarter of an acre there, and that's a lot. Here, it's like, 5, 10 acres, and then, the house is way, the other house, your neighbor's house is down there. So I would walk behind the wood. I wanted to do these trails that would lead to areas where we would be able to congregate and talk and play. And so I'm talking to some of my friends, particularly a gentleman that's the vice president of Caterpillar, and telling him, sharing with him just some thoughts. He said, well, I want to help you. And he goes, why don't you make those trails? And he said, oh, if you use a tractor. And I was like, I've never done anything but music. So the next few days, there was a tractor here with someone teach me how to drive a tractor. It was crazy. So I started doing those trails that I now call rhythm trails, that you would walk kids through these rhythm trails that lead to congregational circles that are representative of, depending on the program or the class, of different cultures, nations, rhythms, or depending on what it is that we're doing. So it was just a way of developing this area to help in order to be able to start developing ways of educating with music. Our mission at Dayglow is obviously to incorporate percussion instruments, but rhythms and dance and vocals in a way where we can inspire kids to come together and appreciate mainly one another. And that's like with participation, teamwork, creativity, talking, communicating with each other. So that's our mindset. Right now the first one is here in Georgia, and we're right now in a interesting place because we've already set out. We have our missions, we have our goals, we have our objectives, we have the programs, the curriculums. We just need right now the funding in order to build out a few buildings that we need, storage facility, and the educational center. And then after we get that built, started next year, the programs and classes here on a regular basis, where we recruit the kids from either local organizations or schools that do not have music programs, bring them over here. But also, then to go and do one of the most important things is to do outreach. That's why I sent you all those things that I've been doing. Like, you could just imagine in the future where it's going to go, because outreach is crucial. Because outreach means more integration. And we're just using music as an incredible tool to develop ways of integrating with each other. And what better way than through sharing different genres and rhythms and teaching them and developing with the kids so they can play and appreciate that music, but appreciate that culture where it comes from. So I'll be able to have here, let's say, a Peruvian quartet come over here to help the kids that are from this area graduate in a Rhythms from Around the World course as they play with a Peruvian quartet their graduation evening performance. But my goal is to have many of these different centers throughout the United States and hopefully the world.
Now, as you do this, I mean, it's a great thing you're doing. How do you still concentrate on music? Because this seems like it would take up so much of your time, and it's such a great cause. I mean, do you sit there? I mean, how do you keep your schedule straight?
It's easier said than done because I get tired. I don't have the same energy that I used to, but I'm getting better at managing it. I still fall all the time and still trying to make it better, and that's where the group of people that you have is so important. So your team is crucial. So this is not a one-man effort. This is a group of people, and we encourage each other. So, but in just talking about me, I fall all the time. Like, for instance, I'll give you just a silly example. On the way to taking out the garbage, I'll stop and build a percussion instrument and maybe write a song and maybe practice some independence when all I was going to do was take out the garbage. So I have that in me to, here comes a squirrel, boom, boom. I do that all the time. So I have a little system in place, I have to write things down and check them off. So I have my day-glow music stuff, and then I have my other music stuff, and then there's the personal life.
Right.
And so it's a fine balance. Like, I'm sure you have found that you just get better at doing it, but you definitely need help, and that's where your team is so important.
Now,
I was just going to say that, besides my partner in life, Joandra, she's helped me tremendously because she's so passive. Where I like sometimes, get all bent out of shape, she'll just kind of like calm me down. And then my VP and my associate Susan Crowd, she's just one of my best friends, and I admire her, and I look up to her, and she shows me, she's got 3 kids, 3 girls, and she has a whole other business. She helps me out, and the way she handles herself is a great example. So like I said, you've got to surround yourself with some very, very good people and time manage.
So now, when are you guys? Are you done the tour, or how often do you go out now?
So right now with ZVB, we're on a cool little I mean, even though we have a couple of events coming up, this month in particular, November and December is pretty much open, which that hasn't happened since we started. I mean, especially the last 3 years, it's been very, very, very hard, very, very busy. And so now for us to be taking this little bit of time off, we're very grateful and enjoying the heck out of it. So right now, Zach has come out with a cool project because Zach is another brain creator. He's just always moving in all sorts of different directions. He's doing an EDM project, which is very cool. I don't know if you've have you heard any of the ZBB music, Steve?
No.
So, last few years, we've gone from country, jam band, southern rock, with a little bit of flavor of the islands, definitely with the percussion going on. And we've incorporated some, now, last few projects, some real good rock and roll in there, and some R&B, and even a swing song. That's how much was from the last album. So, but we did 3 or 4 dance-style EDM music, and he wanted to go further into that direction. So right now he's got a project called Sir Roosevelt, which is really cool. And so he's working on that, which gives him the ability to kind of, take a little step away from the ZBB thing, and it gives us a little break. And then we're getting back to recording in January with the ZBB project.
That's awesome, man. Well, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm glad we got to hook up. I'm glad, we were going back and forth today. You were busy and things were going on. And I want to thank you for coming on. Give all your website information. How can people get in touch with you?
The most important thing for me right now is dayglow.org. Dayglow Music is my dream project, and that's, right now what I'm putting my focus and my main energy on. Other than that, through social media, you could reach out to me through Facebook or Twitter, just at Daniel De Los Reyes. And I'm very, very good at responding. People used to think that I wasn't the one answering or anything like that. No, it's just, be patient sometimes, because I'm very invested in sharing with people life, whether it be input or helping to connect dots, and I'm all about, like, always trying to assist somebody else, in life.
Cool.
So through social media or the dayglow.org, I encourage people, if they can, they have any sort of, number one, it's not like we just ask for, hey, just give a donation. No, get invested into the project and read it, feel it, and if you like it, contact us. Obviously, if you want to make a donation, we are grateful. But what we're trying to do is much needed, especially in nowadays.
Right.
With everything that's going on, we need to be more tolerant of each other's differences. And I think this project of Dayglow Music, with using the music as that tool to break those barriers down, is crucial. It's much needed, and it has to be done.
Perfect.
So
cool. Well, okay. So people, go see him at dayglow.org. Please go follow. It's a good thing. Follow me at Cooper Talk. It's at Cooper Talk. Go to my website, coopertalk.net. You can also email me, Cooper at coopertalk.net. I will get back to you. And don't forget my low-sodium cookbook at stopthesalt.com. It's great, easy recipes to keep you healthy. You can buy it at Barnes & Noble or Amazon, but if you buy it from me, you make more money. So please follow me on Twitter at Cooper Talk. Instagram and Words with Friend, that's Cooper Talk one. Don't forget dayglow.org and check out Daniel De Los Reyes on social media and check out his music. He's got a great history. I looked at his Wikipedia. It's amazing. So I want to thank you for listening, people. I'm Steve Cooper. I'm only as hip as my guests. Don't forget, drink your water, eat your vegetables, take your vitamins, and I'll talk to you next week.